The stars looked different today. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Alpha and watched the darkness of space through the main window. Something was wrong. The usual peaceful quiet of the outer solar system felt heavy and dangerous. "Captain, we have a problem," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her control station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry behind her words. Amy had been his tactical officer for 3 years. She never got worried about small things. Jake walked over to her station. The screens showed dots of light moving toward Earth. Lots of dots, more than Jake had ever seen before. "What am I looking at, Amy?" 200 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're big, really big, and they're coming straight for us. Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "I've never seen anything like this before." Jake felt his stomach drop. 200 ships meant war. It meant death. It meant Earth was in terrible danger. "How long do we have?" "At their current speed, they'll reach Earth's orbit in 18 hours, Amy said. She looked up at Jake with fear in her eyes. "Sir, these ships are huge. Each one is bigger than our biggest battleship." Jake nodded slowly. He had trained for this day his whole life, but he never really believed it would come. Earth had been alone in the galaxy for so long. They had found no other life among the stars. Now it seemed the other life had found them. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have incoming hostiles. 200 ships. Unknown origin. Get me President Grant on the emergency channel." Jake's voice was steady, even though his heart was beating fast. Amy's hands flew over her controls. "Message sent, sir. Connecting you to the President now." The main screen flickered and showed the face of President Lisa Grant. She was in the White House Situation Room. Jake could see other people behind her, all looking worried and scared. "Captain Morrison, what's the situation?" President Grant asked. Her voice was strong, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes too. "Madam President, we have 200 unknown ships approaching Earth. They'll be here in less than 18 hours. We've never seen anything like them before." "President." Grant was quiet for a moment. "Are they trying to talk to us?" "Not yet, ma'am. They're just coming straight at us. Fast." Behind the President, Jake could see General Ben Hughes moving closer to the screen. The general was the head of all Earth's military forces. He was a big man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Captain, this is General Hughes. What do our ships look like compared to theirs?" Jake looked at Amy. She shook her head slowly. "General, our biggest ships look like toys next to theirs. Each of their ships could probably destroy 10 of ours without any trouble." General Hughes was quiet for a long moment. "How many ships do we have ready for battle?" 30 ships, sir. Maybe 35, if we count the ones still in repair." The silence on the communication channel was heavy. Everyone knew the math. 30 Earth ships against 200 alien ships. Ships that were much bigger and probably much stronger. President Grant spoke first. "Captain, keep watching them. Tell us the moment anything changes. We're calling an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council." "Yes, ma'am." The communication ended, and Jake was alone with his crew again. He looked around the bridge. His people were scared, but they were still doing their jobs. Good people, brave people. "Amy, what else can you tell me about these ships?" Amy studied her screens. "They're not trying to hide, sir. They're flying in a straight line right at us. Like they don't care if we see them coming. Like they want used to see them." Jake nodded. That was bad news. It meant the aliens were confident. It meant they thought Earth weak. Maybe they were right. "Sir," said Communications Officer Bill Clark, "we're getting a transmission from the alien fleet." Jake's blood went cold. "Put it on the main screen." The screen changed and showed something that made Jake's skin crawl. The alien was tall and thin with gray skin and yellow eyes. It had no hair, and its face was long and narrow. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty of feeling. "Humans of Earth," the alien said, "I am Supreme Admiral Kextar of the Zorathian Galactic Empire. Your planet has been selected for integration into our empire. You have 24 hours to surrender completely. All human military forces must power down their weapons. All human. Leaders must prepare to transfer control to Zorathian administrators." The alien's yellow eyes seemed to look right at Jake through the screen. "If you choose to resist, your species will be eliminated completely. Your planet will be given to a more worthy species. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. You have 24 hours. The transmission ended. The bridge was completely quiet. Amy broke the silence. "Sir, what do we do?" Jake looked at his crew. These people trusted him to keep them safe. They trusted him to make the right choice. But what was the right choice when facing impossible odds? "We do our jobs," Jake said finally. "We watch them. We learn everything we can about them, and we prepare for the worst." But inside, Jake was thinking about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea that alien ships were coming to destroy everything they had ever known, about his own family back on Earth, about whether humanity would even exist in 25 hours. The aliens thought humans would just give up. They thought Earth would surrender without a fight. Maybe they were right. Maybe resistance was hopeless. But Jake Morrison had never given up on anything in his life. And he wasn't going to start now. Supreme Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet ahead. Earth looked so peaceful from space, so weak, so easy to conquer. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, Commander Vexahal, "the human ships are moving into defensive positions around their planet. Shall we destroy them now?" Kextar laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. "Let them play with their toys, Commander. I want to see what these humans think they can do against the mighty Zorathian Empire." Kextar had been conquering planets for over 200 years. He had destroyed 847 different species. Some had tried to fight. Some had tried to hide. Some had tried to run. All of them had failed. All of them were now dead or slaves. "Their largest ships are smaller than our smallest fighters," Commander Vexahol said. "This will be the easiest conquest in the history of our empire." "Of course it will be," Kextar said. "Look at them. They barely know how to fly between their own planets. They think their little metal boxes can stop us." Far away on Mars Defense Platform, Commander Pete Williams watched the alien fleet through his telescopes. The Zorathian ships were moving, slowly and carelessly through the solar system. They weren't even trying to defend themselves. "Sir," said Dr. Kate Nelson, his science officer, "I'm reading their energy patterns. These ships are built for attack, not defense. Their shields are weak on the sides and back." Pete nodded. "They're not expecting a real fight. They think we'll just give up." "Maybe we should," said Lieutenant Tom Brady from the weapons station. "Look at the size of those things. Each one could destroy our entire base with one shot." "Maybe," Pete said. "But I didn't join the military to give up without a fight." Dr. Nelson was studying her screens carefully. "Commander, there's something strange about their formation. They're flying in a straight line with big gaps between their ships. No military force would do that unless they were absolutely sure the enemy couldn't hurt them." Pete looked at the formation through his own screen. Dr. Nelson was right. The alien ships were spread out like they were on parade, not like they were going to war. Either they were very stupid or very confident. Pete hoped they were just stupid. Back on Earth, President Grant sat in the underground war room with her top advisors. The room was deep under the White House. built to survive nuclear war. Now it might need to survive something much worse. General Hughes, what are our real chances? President Grant asked. General Hughes looked tired. He had been awake for 20 hours, making plans for a war that seemed impossible to win. Honestly, Madam President, if we fight them ship to ship, we'll lose. Their technology is too advanced. So we surrender? No, said a new voice. Dr. Alan Ross walked into the room carrying a thick folder. Dr. Ross was Earth's best expert on alien life. He had spent his whole career studying the possibility of contact with other species. Dr. Ross, please tell me you have good news. President Grant said. Dr. Ross sat down and opened his folder. I've been studying their communications, the way they talk, the way they think, and I've found something very interesting. Everyone in the room leaned forward. They've never lost a battle, Dr. Ross said. Not once in over 3,000 years. Every species they've ever met has surrendered immediately when they saw the Zorothian fleet. That's not good news, General Hughes said. Actually, it is, Dr. Ross replied, because it means they've never had to really fight. They've never faced an enemy that refused to give up. They've never learned how to handle real resistance. President, Grant thought about this. You're saying they might not be as strong as they look? I'm saying they might not know how to be strong when they need to be. They're used to winning through fear, not through fighting. General Hughes was looking at Dr. Ross with new interest. What do you suggest we do? Dr. Ross smiled for the first time in hours. We do something no other species has ever done. We make them think we're going to surrender. We let them get comfortable, and then we show them what humans are really capable of. What do you mean? President Grant asked. I mean, we've been hiding our real strength for decades. The public thinks our space program is just for exploration and research. They don't know about the weapons we've built, the ships we've hidden, the plans we've made. General Hughes nodded slowly. Protocol Omega. What's Protocol Omega? President Grant asked. A plan we hoped we'd never need, General Hughes said. A plan for fighting a war against a superior enemy. A plan that depends on the enemy thinking we're weak when we're actually strong. Dr. Ross pulled out a map of the solar system. It showed Earth, Mars, the Moon, and the asteroid belt. But it also showed things that weren't supposed to exist. Hidden bases, secret weapons, ships that no one knew about. For 50 years, we've been preparing for this day, Dr. Ross said. We've built weapons in secret. We've trained soldiers in secret. We've prepared for a war that everyone hoped would never come. President Grant stared at the map. How many people know about this? Less than 1,000 people on the entire planet, General Hughes said. The project has been so secret that even most of the military doesn't know it exists. Meanwhile, on Defense Station Alpha, Captain Jake Morrison was talking to his daughter. Sergeant Mary Morrison was a Special Forces soldier stationed on the Moon. Dad, we're ready down here, Mary said through the secure communication channel. My team has been training for this our whole lives. I know, sweetheart. Just stay safe. We will. And Dad, don't worry about us. We're not as weak as these. Aliens think we are. Jake smiled. His daughter was braver than he was. I love you, Mary. Love you too, Dad. See you after we win this thing. Supreme Admiral Kekstar was getting impatient. The humans had been silent for 12 hours. He expected them to surrender by now. Every other species had surrendered much faster. Commander, Vexal, send another message to the humans. Tell them they have 12 hours left. Tell them that if they don't surrender, we will begin destroying their cities one by one. Yes, Admiral. But what Kekstar didn't know was that the humans were using those 12 hours to prepare. All across the solar system, hidden weapons were coming online. Secret ships were moving into position. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives for this moment were getting ready to fight. The Zorathians thought they were about to conquer another weak species. They thought the humans would beg for mercy. They thought this would be easy. They were about to learn the humans were different from every other species they had ever met. They were about to learn that sometimes the prey fights back, and sometimes the prey wins. Dr. Alan Ross had not slept in 36 hours. His eyes were red and tired, but his mind was sharp. He had been studying every word the Zorathians had said, every movement their ships had made, and he had found something that changed everything. "General Hughes, you need to see this," Dr. Ross said as he burst into the war room. His hands were shaking with excitement. General Hughes looked up from the battle plans he was studying. "What is it, Doctor?" "I've been analyzing their communications. Not just what they said, but how they said it. The way they move their ships, the way they think about war." Dr. Ross spread his papers across the table. "They're not as strong as they want us to believe." President Grant leaned forward. "Explain. Every species they've conquered surrendered without fighting. Every single one. For 3,000 years, they've never had to actually prove they're as powerful as they claim to be. But their ships are huge," General Hughes said. "Our sensors show massive energy readings." "Yes, but look at how they use that power." Dr. Ross pointed to a chart. "All of their energy goes to weapons and engines. Almost nothing goes to shields or defense. They've built their entire military around the idea that the enemy will be too scared to fight back." General Hughes studied the papers. Slowly, his expression changed from worry to something that might have been hope. "You're saying they're not prepared for a real war?" "I'm saying they've forgotten how to fight a real war. They've been bullying helpless planets for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to face an enemy that fights back." President Grant stood up and walked to the big screen that showed the solar system. The alien ships were moving closer to Earth. They looked unstoppable. But now she was starting to think that maybe they weren't. "General, tell me about protocol." "Omega, the real version." General Hughes activated his security codes, and the screen changed. Now it showed a different solar system, one with hundreds of hidden bases, secret shipyards, weapons that officially didn't exist. "Madam President, what you're seeing is the result of 50 years of secret preparation. We started building this after the first radio signals we sent into space. We realized that if anyone answered, they might not be friendly." The screen showed the moon, but instead of an empty rock, it showed underground cities, factories, military bases that had been hidden from the world for decades. "We've been mining asteroids for resources, building ships in hidden shipyards, training soldiers for a war we hoped would never come, all in secret. How many ships do we really have?" President Grant asked. 800 combat vessels, hidden throughout the solar system, plus another 300 support ships, and weapons platforms that number in the thousands. President Grant felt her knees go weak. 800 ships? But we told the aliens we only had 30, because that's all the public knows about. The other 770 ships have been hidden on the far side of the moon, in the asteroid belt, and in deep space, waiting. Dr. Ross was looking at more of his analysis. "There's something else. I've been studying the records of the species they conquered. Every single one made the same mistake." "What mistake?" General Hughes asked. "They tried to fight the Zorathians the way the Zorathians wanted to fight. Big ships against big ships. Direct confrontation. The Zorathians are good at that kind of fighting because that's the only kind they know. So what do we do differently?" "We fight like humans," Dr. Ross said with a smile. "We use tricks. We use deception. We make them think one thing while we do something completely different." On the far side of the moon, Sergeant Mary Morrison was suiting up for the most important mission of her life. Around her, 200 other Special Forces soldiers were doing the same thing. They had been training for this mission since they were children, but they had never been told what it was for. Now they knew. "Listen up, people," said Colonel Sam Brooks as he walked into the briefing room. "You've all been wondering why you've been training to fight in space. Why you've been learning to board enemy ships. Why you've been practicing with weapons that don't officially exist. Today you find out." The soldiers looked at each other. They had always known their training was different, more secret, more dangerous. But they had never known why. The alien ships approaching Earth are built for intimidation, not for defense. They have weak spots that our intelligence teams have identified. Your job is to exploit those weak spots. Colonel Brooks activated holographic display. It showed a Zorathian ship in perfect detail. Each team will use a stealth ship to get close to a Zorathian vessel. You'll board the ship, disable their main systems, and get out. The goal is not to destroy the ships, but to make them helpless. Mary Morrison raised her hand. "Sir, how do we know their ships have weak spots?" "Because, Sergeant, we've been studying them for longer than you might think." The hologram changed to show Earth's radio telescopes. But these weren't the telescopes the public knew about. These were bigger, more powerful, and completely secret. For 30 years, we've been listening to Zorathian communications. We know how their technology works. We know how their ships are built. We know their tactics. They don't know anything about us except what we've chosen to tell them. Meanwhile, on Earth Defense Station Alpha, Captain Jake Morrison was receiving new orders. Orders that made no sense at first. "Amy, I need you to send a message to the Zorathian fleet. Tell them we want to negotiate." Lieutenant Amy Carter looked confused. "Sir, are we surrendering?" "No, we're lying." Amy's confusion turned to understanding. "You want them to think we're giving up. I want them to get comfortable. I want them to think they've already won. People make mistakes when they think they're safe." On the Zorathian flagship, Supreme Admiral Kex-Tar received the human message with satisfaction. Finally, these primitive creatures were seeing sense. "Commander Vexahol, the humans want to negotiate, just like all the others." "Shall I tell them?" "Our terms, Admiral?" "Tell them we'll accept their complete surrender. All human military forces must power down their weapons. All human leaders must come aboard our ships to sign the surrender documents. Standard procedure." But Commander Vexahol was looking at his sensors with confusion. "Admiral, I'm reading some strange energy signatures from the human side of the system." "What kind of energy signatures?" "I don't know, sir. They're very faint. Probably just their primitive technology malfunctioning." Kex-Tar laughed. "Of course it is. These humans can barely keep their own ships running. Don't worry about it." What Kex-Tar didn't know was that those energy signatures were 800 human warships powering up their weapon systems. Ships that had been hidden and waiting for decades. Ships that were about to change the course of galactic history. Dr. Kate Nelson, still on Mars Defense Platform, was monitoring the Zorathian fleet with new equipment. Equipment that had been secret until today. "Commander Williams, I'm reading detailed scans of their ships now. The new sensors are incredible." "What do you see?" "Their armor is strong in front, but weak on the sides and back. Their engines are powerful but unshielded. And, sir, they're not scanning for threats. They're just flying straight toward Earth like they're on a parade route." Commander Pete Williams smiled. "Dr. Nelson, I think these aliens are about to learn something about human nature." "What's that, sir?" "We're really good at surprises. In 12 hours, the Zorathians would reach Earth. They expected to find a frightened, helpless species ready to surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity had been preparing for this moment for half a century. the greatest military empire in Galactic. History was about to face an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. An enemy that had been watching them, learning from them, and preparing to defeat them. The Zorathians thought their dreams of conquest were about to come true. They had no idea that their dreams were about to become their worst nightmare. President Lisa Grant stood in the war room and looked at the clock on the wall. 1 hour and 37 minutes until the Zorathian deadline. 1 hour and 37 minutes until humanity either surrendered or went to war against impossible. Odds dot, but now the odds didn't look impossible anymore. General Hughes, are all our hidden forces ready? Yes, Madam President. 800 ships are in position. 3,000 weapon platforms are online. Our special forces teams are ready to board enemy vessels. For the first time in this crisis, I think we might actually win. President Grant nodded. Dr. Ross, are you sure about their weaknesses? Dr. Ross looked tired but confident. Their entire strategy depends on fear. They've never had to fight an enemy that wasn't afraid of them. They've never had to adapt to new tactics. They've been using the same approach for 3,000 years because it's always worked. And you think it won't work on humans? Madam President, humans are the only species in the galaxy that fights harder when we're scared. Every other species runs away or gives up. We get angry. President Grant smiled for the first time in 2 days. Open a channel to the Zorathian fleet. On the main screen, the ugly face of Supreme Admiral Kextar appeared. His yellow eyes looked bored, like he was dealing with something unimportant. Human. Leader, Kextar said in his cold voice. Are you ready to surrender your pathetic species? President Grant looked directly into those yellow eyes. Admiral Kextar, I have a different proposal for you. Kextar laughed. You are not in a position to make proposals, human. You will surrender or you will die. Actually, Admiral, you are the one who should surrender. The silence on the communication channel was complete. Kextar's expression changed from boredom to confusion to anger. You dare to threaten the Zorathian Empire? Your entire fleet could not destroy one of our ships. You're right, President Grant said calmly. Our fleet of 30 ships couldn't hurt you. But that's not our real fleet. What are you talking about? President Grant smiled. Show him, General. General Hughes pressed a button, and every hidden weapon in the solar system came online at the same time. The space around the Zorathian fleet, which had seemed empty, suddenly lit up with thousands of targeting lasers. Kextar's eyes went wide. His ship's alarms started ringing. On his tactical display, hundreds of human ships appeared out of nowhere. Weapon platforms that had been invisible suddenly became visible. The empty space around his fleet was now full of human weapons, all pointed at Zorathian ships. Impossible, Kextar whispered. Admiral, President Grant said, you have 1 hour to leave our solar system. If you're still here in 61 minutes, we will destroy every one of your ships. You're bluffing. No species would dare attack. The Zorathian Empire. Admiral, you've spent 3,000 years conquering species that were afraid of you. You've never met a species that spent 50 years preparing to kill you. On his flagship, Kextar was watching his tactical screens in horror. Hundreds of human ships were surrounding his fleet. Thousands of weapon platforms were targeting his vessels. How was this possible? Commander Vexahol, how many human ships are out there? I count 800 combat vessels, Admiral, plus support ships, plus what appears to be several thousand stationary weapons platforms. Where did they come from? I don't know, sir. They weren't there an hour ago. What Kextar didn't understand was that the human ships had been there all along, hidden behind asteroids, on the far side of moons, in the shadow of planets. Waiting. Captain Jake Morrison, now aboard the command ship USS Titan, was coordinating the solar system's defenses. Every hidden weapon was under his control. Every secret ship was following his orders. Amy, what's the status of our Special Forces teams? Lieutenant Amy Carter, now his tactical officer on the larger ship, checked her screens. All teams are in position, sir. Sergeant Morrison's team is ready to board the Zorathian flagship on your command. Jake felt proud of his daughter, but also worried. Tell all teams to wait for my signal. If this goes wrong, they'll be our last hope. On the stealth ship USS Shadow, Sergeant Mary Morrison and her team were floating in space just 50 meters from the Zorathian flagship. The alien ship was so huge that it blocked out the stars. But Mary wasn't scared. She had been training for this moment her entire life. Team leaders check in, Mary said into her radio. Team 2 ready. Team 3 ready. Team 4 ready. 20 teams, 200 soldiers, all invisible to Zorathian sensors, all ready to turn the most powerful ships in the galaxy into floating junk. Commander Pete Williams, watching from Mars' defense platform, couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Zorathian ships were sitting in space like they were paralyzed. Their weapons were powered down. Their shields were weak. They weren't acting like a military force anymore. They were acting like scared animals. Dr. Nelson, what are their ships doing? Nothing, sir. They're just floating there. I think they're in shock. Good. Shocked enemies make mistakes. Back on the Zorathian flagship, Supreme Admiral Kekstar was having the first crisis of confidence in his long military career. He had conquered 847 worlds. He had destroyed entire species. He had never lost a battle, but he had never faced anything like this. Commander Vexel, can we fight our way out? Admiral, we're completely surrounded. If we fight, we'll be outnumbered 3-1. And sir, their weapons are targeting our weak spots. They know exactly where to hit us. How do they know our weak spots? I don't know, sir. But they're aiming for our engine ports, our shield generators, our weapon batteries. All the places our armor is weakest. Kekstar realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans hadn't just hidden their ships. They had studied Zorathian technology. They knew how Zorathian ships worked. They had been preparing for this fight for a long time. Sir, Commander Vexahol said quietly, what are your orders? For the first time in 3,000 years, a Zorathian admiral didn't know what to do. President Grant's voice came over the communication channel again. Admiral Kekstar, you now have 45 minutes to leave our solar system. I suggest you don't waste time thinking about it. Human, if you attack us, the entire Zorathian Empire will come to destroy your world. Admiral, if you attack us, there won't be any Zorathian ships left to carry the news back to your empire. Kekstar looked at his tactical display again. 800 human ships, thousands of weapons, all targeting his fleet with perfect accuracy. How? He asked. How did you hide so many ships? We've been preparing for you since before you knew. We existed, President Grant said. We've been listening to your communications for 30 years. We know how you fight. We know how you think. We know your weaknesses. No species has ever refused to surrender to the Zorathian Empire. Admiral, you've never met humans before. General Hughes leaned toward the communication screen. Admiral, your empire has spent 3,000 years picking on species that couldn't fight back. Today you found a species that can. The question is, are you smart enough to walk away? Kekstar stared at the screens showing the human fleet. 800 ships built in secret, hidden for decades, waiting for this moment. For the first time in his life, Supreme Admiral Kekstar of the Zorathian Empire was afraid. The clock was ticking. 43 minutes until humanity's ultimatum expired. 43 minutes for Kekstar to make the most important decision of his life: run away and live, or fight and die. The choice should have been easy. But Kextar had never run away from anything in his life, and he wasn't sure he could start now. Supreme Admiral Kextar stared at the countdown timer on his screen. 37 minutes until the human ultimatum expired. 37 minutes to make a decision that would change galactic history. His pride told him to fight. His experience told him he had never lost a battle. But his intelligence told him that today might be different. "Commander Vexhall, what are the odds if we attack?" Commander Vexhall looked at his battle computers. The numbers were not good. "Admiral, our ships are superior to theirs individually, but they outnumber us 4-1. And, sir, they're positioned perfectly. If we attack, we'll lose at least half our fleet." Half? Kextar couldn't believe it. In 3,000 years, the Zorathian Empire had never lost even 10 ships in a single battle. "Maybe more, sir. They've studied our tactics. They know exactly how we fight." Kextar made his decision. A decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships attack formation. Target the human vessels. Show these primitives the power of the Zorathian Empire. On Earth, President Grant watched the alien ships begin to move into attack positions. "General Hughes, they've made their choice." "Yes, ma'am." "All human forces, this is General Hughes. You are authorized to engage." "Repeat, you are authorized to engage." Captain Jake Morrison, commanding the human fleet from the USS Titan, felt his heart racing. This was it. The moment that would decide whether humanity lived or died. All ships opened fire. Space exploded with light. 800 human ships fired at the same time. Thousands of hidden weapon platforms unleashed their deadly cargo. The Zorathian fleet, caught in the middle of changing formation, was hit from every direction at once. The first thing that surprised Kextar was how accurate the human weapons were. Every shot hit exactly where it was supposed to hit. Engine ports, shield generators, weapon systems. The humans weren't trying to destroy Zorathian ships. They were trying to disable them. A second thing that surprised him was how fast it happened. In the first 60 seconds of the battle, 30 Zorathian ships lost their engines. 20 ships lost their weapons. 15 ships lost their shields. Completely. "Commander Vexhall, report." "Sir, we're taking massive damage. They're hitting us faster than we can repair the damage." "Return fire." "We're trying, sir, but they're everywhere. Every time we turn to shoot at one group of ships, another group attacks us from behind." What Kextar didn't know was that the humans had spent 50 years studying Zorathian battle tactics. They knew exactly how Zorathian ships would move. They knew exactly where to be to avoid Zorathian weapons. Commander Pete Williams, coordinating the Mars Defense Platform, watched the battle with amazement. "Dr. Nelson, look at this. The Zorathian ships are moving exactly like our computers predicted they would." "It's like they're following a script," Dr. Nelson agreed. "They've been using the same tactics for so long that they can't adapt to anything new. And we've been planning for their tactics for decades." On the stealth ship USS Shadow, Sergeant Mary Morrison got the signal she had been waiting for. "All teams, go! Go!" 20 stealth ships moved toward 20 different Zorathian vessels. The alien ships were so busy trying to fight the human fleet that they didn't notice the small ships attaching to their hulls. Mary and her team cut through the hull of the Zorathian flagship in less than 2 minutes. The aliens inside were not expecting boarders. They had never been boarded before in 3,000 years of conquest. "Team 1 is inside the flagship," Mary reported, moving toward the engine room. "Team 2 is inside target ship 7, heading for their weapons control. Team 3 is in, going for their shield generators." All across the Zorathian fleet, human soldiers were doing what no enemy had ever done before. They were inside Zorathian ships, disabling them from within. Supreme, Admiral Kextar felt his flagship shake as explosions rocked the engine room. What's happening? Sir, we have intruders on board. Human soldiers are inside our ship. Impossible. Our sensors didn't detect any boarding craft. They're not using boarding craft, sir. They're using some kind of stealth ships. Small ones. Our sensors can't see them. Kextar realized that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just more numerous than he had expected. They were smarter. They had been planning this battle for longer than he could imagine. Sir, Commander Vexahol said quietly, the humans have disabled 47 of our ships. We've only disabled 12 of theirs. How is that possible? They know exactly where to hit us, sir, and we don't know where to hit them. Their ships are built differently than anything we've ever seen. Mary Morrison and her team reached the flagship's engine room. The Zorathian engineers inside looked at the human soldiers with shock and fear. They had never seen aliens before, and they had definitely never seen aliens with weapons. Engine room secured, Mary reported. Setting. Charges on the main power coupling. The explosion that followed didn't destroy the flagship, but it did something worse. It left the ship floating helplessly in space, unable to move or fight. All across the Zorathian fleet, the same thing was happening. Ship after ship was being disabled by human boarding teams. The mighty Zorathian Empire, which had conquered 847 worlds, was being defeated by creatures they had thought were primitive. Admiral, Commander Vexahol said, we've lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are offering us a chance to surrender. Kextar looked at his tactical display. Most of his ships were dark, dead in space. The few ships that were still working were surrounded by hundreds of human vessels. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Zorathian admiral was forced to do something that no Zorathian had ever done before. Open a channel to the human fleet, Kextar said quietly. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen. Admiral Kextar, are you ready to discuss surrender? The words felt like poison in Kextar's mouth. What are your terms? Complete. Surrender of your fleet. Your ships will be escorted to Earth's moon, where they will be studied. Your crews will be questioned and then sent home. You will carry a message back to your empire. What message? That Earth is not defenseless, that humanity is not weak, and that any future attempt to conquer our world will end the same way this one did. Kextar felt something break inside him. His pride, his confidence, his belief that the Zorathian Empire was invincible. I accept your terms. President Grant appeared on the communication screen. Admiral, there's one more thing you need to understand. What? We've been broadcasting this entire battle to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Every species that your empire has conquered is watching you lose. They're seeing that the mighty Zorathian Empire can be defeated. Kextar's yellow eyes went wide. If the conquered species saw Zorathian weakness, they might rebel. The entire empire could collapse. You've destroyed us, he whispered. No, Admiral. You destroyed yourselves. You became so arrogant that you forgot how to be careful. You became so confident that you forgot how to be smart. Dr. Alan Ross stepped into view on the human communication screen. Admiral, your empire's biggest mistake was thinking that fear was the same thing as strength. For 3,000 years, you've been bullying species that couldn't fight back. Today you met a species that could. But how? How did you hide so many ships? How did you prepare for so long without us knowing? Because, Admiral, you never bothered to really study the species you conquered. You never learned from them. You just destroyed them. We studied every species you defeated. We learned from their mistakes. We spent 50 years preparing for this day, General Hughes joined the conversation. Admiral, every species you conquered made the same error. They tried to fight you the way you wanted to fight. Big ships against big ships. We fought you the way humans fight, with tricks, with deception, with patience. Kextar looked around his ruined flagship. His crew was staring at him with fear and confusion. They had never seen their admiral defeated. Before, the Zorathian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, Kextar said. And now it's over, President Grant replied. Your dreams of conquering Earth are finished. Your dreams of galactic domination are finished. You came here expecting to find weak prey. Instead, you found predators who had been waiting for you. As the surviving Zorathian ships were escorted to Earth's moon, news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. On hundreds of conquered worlds, enslaved species looked up at the stars with new hope. The Zorathian Empire, which had seemed invincible for millennia, had been broken by a species that refused to be intimidated. The empire that had conquered the galaxy through fear had finally met a species that got stronger when it was afraid. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. Humanity had faced its greatest test and won. But President Grant knew that this was just the beginning. Other empires would come. Other enemies would test human resolve, but they would find what the Zorathians had found. A species that prepared for war while hoping for peace. A species that studied its enemies while hiding its strengths. A species that never gave up, never surrendered, and never backed down. The galaxy had learned something new about humans. Something that would be remembered for thousands of years. Humans were not the weakest species in the galaxy. They were the most dangerous. And anyone who forgot that lesson would pay the same price the Zorathians had paid. The Zorathian Empire